It is the night of the 5th to 6th of July 1944, exactly 1 month after the Allies' successful invasion of Normandy. Ashore, the battle continues as the Germans fight hard to try and contain the Allied advance, while off the original invasion beaches, hundreds of ships bring in fresh supplies and more troops, while warships protect them. The Germans still have plenty of fight left and have realized that attacks on Allied shipping could cause the British, American and Canadian forces ashore serious problems. But the question is, how? Full-size U-boats largely avoid the English Channel due to the very strong anti-submarine defences and Allied aerial superiority. Likewise, Germany's fast motor torpedo boats, the S-boats, are not effective either. But the German Navy has a weapon that has already been tried out against the Allied beachhead of Anzio in Italy the year before. It is, to say the least, a very unusual weapon indeed. Heading for the invasion beaches were 26 human torpedoes named Neger. The name in English means Negro and was a play on words because the inventor was Richard Moore, whose surname means Moor, as in the North African Berbers and Arabs who invaded southern Europe in the Middle Ages. The Neger was a G7E electric torpedo with a Spartan cockpit where the explosive warhead would have been, the pilot sitting with his head above the surface of the water, a Perspex aircraft dome protecting him from the waves. Naturally, such a low position in the water impaired the pilot's ability to see much, and he navigated using a wrist compass and the stars, for the Neger's cockpit created a visible wake, meaning that the weapon could only be used at night. But the plexiglass dome created another problem: fresh air for the pilot. If oxygen tanks were fitted, they would unbalance the Neger and limit its operational radius. Instead, the pilot wore a Draeger rebreather apparatus. The Neger's offensive power was from another G7E torpedo slung beneath the piloted one. The pilot aimed at a target using an aiming spike on the Neger's nose, with a graduated scale on the dome. A cockpit lever started the torpedo slung beneath, which would go racing off towards the target while the Neger returned to base. Sometimes the torpedo failed to detach and dragged the Neger with it at 30 knots, the pilot having no way of shutting down the torpedo once started. The Neger, electrically powered, had a combat range of about 30 nautical miles at 4 knots and weighed 2.7 tons. Naturally, in order for the Neger to reach a target and return, it had to be launched no more than 15 nautical miles away. When first used in combat in Italy in late 1943 against the Anzio beachhead, one major problem was launching Negers into water deep enough to start the motors. No cranes or lifting devices were available in the field. The Germans solved the issue by creating a kind of pram that could be manhandled into the sea off a beach, the Neger floating free. In Italy, mistakes were made and pilots died even before operations began. On arrival at Anzio, no Allied supply ships were present in the harbours, and the Negers instead torpedoed 2 small warships and a coast defence gun. The lessons learned at Anzio were put to good use in Normandy in July 1944. A small port southwest of Trouville was selected as the launching site, the Negers on their prams carefully hidden in barns and woods close to shore. Due to range limits, the nearest Allied beach was Sword, one of the 2 British beaches in Normandy. The current off the Normandy coast flowed faster than the Neger's cruising speed, so the operation depended on the Neger using the tide to carry them to the target and back again to the base from which they had been launched. Such tidal conditions were only correct for 4 days each month, and the wind had to be less than force 4, as choppy seas prevented the Neger pilot from seeing anything. The launching point was Villers-Amer, just outside Trouville. It was planned to launch the Negers between 2300 and 0100 hours, bringing them to the target area between 0300 and 0500, coinciding with a period of slack water as the tide turned. During that period, the pilots would select targets and fire their torpedoes at around 0600 hours. Sailing on the tidal stream and using their own power, the Negers would then return to base. At Villers, 2 concrete ramps were used to launch the Negers down the beach in their prams to the water. 26 craft were successfully launched. Small launches then guided the Negers out through German minefields to the tidal stream. Navigating in the moonlight and using their wrist compasses, most of the Negers attacked much earlier than planned. 24 actually attacked targets, and they managed to sink 2 Royal Navy minesweepers, HMS Magic and Cato. 9 Negers survived the resulting depth charges as the British hunted for the small craft, making it back to Villers-sur-Mer. HMS Magic was an Ork-class minesweeper built in Savannah, Georgia, 32 being built for the British, with 12 retained eventually by the US Navy. The German torpedo completely destroyed the 890-ton vessel, killing 3 officers and 43 ratings aboard. HMS Cato was another Ork-class vessel built in Seattle. Cato was actually searching for survivors from HMS Magic when she herself was torpedoed by a Neger. 24 of her crew were killed. A second attack was launched on the night of the 7th to 8th of July, this time conducted by 21 Negers. The moonlight the craft needed for navigation also proved a problem, as the wakes made by the pilots' domes could be seen by the crews of defending British warships. Aircraft also joined in the slaughter. Despite being under heavy British attack, the Negers scored 2 more victories. The Ork-class minesweeper HMS Pylades was believed to have been struck astern by 2 German mines. The vessel sank. A television series in the early 2000s located the wreck and confirmed that the Pylades was actually sunk by 2 torpedoes fired by Negers. But the biggest prize was ORP Dragon, a World War I vintage British Danae-class light cruiser on loan to the Polish Navy. The Dragon was returning to the area off the city of Caen, where her guns would add their weight to the ground attackers trying to capture the city from fanatical SS defenders. At 0540 hours, Dragon was struck by a torpedo fired from a Neger. The pilot, Werner Gerhold, had already infiltrated past small British patrol vessels and was after bigger fish. He torpedoed the Dragon, the torpedo slamming into the cruiser's 3rd magazine and engine room, starting a serious fire. 26 of her crew were killed. The vessel was abandoned and ended her days as part of an artificial Mulberry Harbour breakwater near Courseulles on the Normandy coast. Gerhold was awarded the Knight's Cross, Germany's highest decoration for valour. The Neger was then replaced by an improved version, the Marder. The Marder was much better than the Neger, as it included a flooding tank and therefore could dive, improving its survivability against aircraft and surface vessels. Maximum diving depth was 25 meters or 82 feet. On the 20th of July 1944, the Royal Navy destroyer HMS Isis apparently struck a mine and sank off the western sector of the Normandy beaches, with a loss of 11 officers and 143 ratings. It has been suspected that a Marder torpedo was actually responsible for her loss. The last German kill off Normandy in a Marder was achieved on the 3rd of August 1944, when Herbert Berrer torpedoed the Hunt-class Royal Navy destroyer HMS Korn during a mass attack by human torpedoes, S-boats and explosive motorboats called Linzer. 4 officers and 126 ratings were lost aboard the British vessel, and Berrer received the Knight's Cross. Dr. Goebbels' propaganda ministry focused a lot of media attention on these human torpedo successes, and in this film we see Knight's Cross winner Werner Gerhold and other Neger pilots demonstrating the weapon to Hitler Youths.
Das ist ja gut. Ja, jawohl. Jetzt könnt ihr euch nicht unterhalten. Hier, da drüber zielen hier. Hier, Platz zeigen. So. Oh. Siehst du was? Nochmal. Hier. Hier. Hallo? Klar zeigen. Klar zeigen. So, klar zeigen.
As with so many late-war German weapons, the Neger and Marder proved more lethal to their operators than to the Allied navies, inflicting insignificant damage on the massive Allied naval forces off Normandy. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also help support my channel at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box.